As entertainment and media have grown and developed over the years, we have as an audience have changed our preferences. Once going from reading books and magazines and comic strips, and as television and other forms like YouTube and video streaming services have become more popular, a lot of classic tales have been redone and drawn or filmed as movies or TV shows, even cartoons and anime. And a point that comes up fairly regularly is how faithful a series has been adapted into this new form of media. Some adaptations are good because they are fairly faithful to the original source material and don't go off on their own side stories, while others are criticized for being too faithful and in cases like anime, they may actually straight up just have blank scenes where like you cut from a mountain to like a village or something and it's not properly transitioned because they go straight panel to panel. But other series have their faithful, as they are unfaithful, are rewarded in a different way. The The Last of Us, I remember early on people praised it for being unfaithful and telling its own story, while you know other series who are unfaithful don't have that same positive connotation. For example, Tokyo Ghoul, it was unfaithful and the story made no sense. So the strength of adaptation is different on a case by case basis. The 1995 Ghost in the Shell movie is a unique experience where, instead of being entirely faithful to the manga, it grabs the manga's sort of monster of the week, plot by plot stasis, and combines it all into one story. Barring the intro, which is actually there to get us accustomed to the character of the Major, the movie and the manga both tell entirely different stories. And this is an interesting point because usually you get either complete faithfulness or nothing. It's a unique story. But in this case, the movie decided to grab the manga and make a story that wasn't faithful, but grabbed a lot of the most popular scenes or some of the most iconic moments from the manga and make them stand out in their own stage, while adding its own scenes that were still actually to this day some of the best scenes in cinematography. The Major standoff towards the end of the movie, the part where the Major fights the assailant on the harbor area while invisible. Those are just a couple of moments that are only available to you if you watch the movie, but stand out so much because of the way they are animated and the way that they look and the way that they organically integrate with the story. While that scene on the docks is amazing, the original version wasn't even about the Major. That scene ends at the populated marketplace because it's a scene about Togasa in the manga. But in the movie, the Major follows the crook all the way through, and then we get this gorgeously animated fight scene, and honestly, it's a top moment. I am. Now, talking about faithful adaptations, on the other hand of the spectrum, we have the garbage movie from 2017 that grabbed the amazing movie that existed in 1995 and just kind of crapped all over the legacy. Like, the story was nonsensical. A lot of the original scenes lost their weight. The scene on the, like, dock bit where the major follows the crook was done terribly, where unlike in the original where the major stops very early on because the guy clearly doesn't know anything about himself, the major is just like, oh, I'm gonna beat you and drown you and hate you because I'm a not character in this version. And it honestly makes me sad. My brain turned off halfway through that movie because it was so fucking poorly written, and it made me hate, like, ever turning on my TV and watching it. It was awful. When I talk about the original manga and the movie, the comparisons are night and day, because the manga told one story where the major was an upbeat, she was basically a problem child. She made jokes, she fucked around most of the time, she took nothing seriously, and the movie made her mysterious and interesting. And then we got the 2017 version, which took all the interesting parts out and made her mysterious in a way that could have been interesting, but didn't because the movie sucked. So I think we'll stop talking about the 2017 version. I just wanted to point out that it is bad and poorly adapted and is a clear sign of a terrible, unfaithful adaptation, unlike the original. As I said, the movie completely changed the Major's personality, which doesn't usually work. The Major was light-hearted, cracked a lot of jokes, and honestly did not take a lot of the events seriously. While in the movie she was cold, stiff, and she made a couple of jokes, especially earlier on. Usually this would not work and is a terrible idea. And it kind of shows in this movie as well, where towards the end we are told that the Major has changed somehow, but as an audience, the change is very minor. While in the manga, because the Major was so up, light-hearted and happy all the time, the change was more noticeable when she was after she had first interacted with the puppet master. And while one or two scenes in the movie are made kind of bad by this change, the fact that the Major's personality for every other adaptation after this movie is based on her movie appearance and not her manga appearance speaks volumes to how great this movie was and how it influenced a lot of people. And honestly, if one or two scenes falling a little flat is the sort of downside to some of the unfaithfulness from the manga, I think it shows how well this movie is at telling the story and making the plot make a little more sense, because in the manga there was no plot. It was kind of all over the place. And I say this as a giant fan. Like, it was pretty fucking, like, scribbly at points. Like, I loved it, but there are times where you could not tell what the fuck was going on. Especially in the second half of the manga. Ooh, reading some of those fights. Man, what the fuck was going on? But most people have never read the manga, so they don't actually know what happens. I mean, people have watched Innocence, but that movie is like awful. I mean, it could be worse, but like, yikes, that movie is bad. Anyway, we're getting kind of sidetracked here. The original movie was good because it was willing to change things that wouldn't help the movie progress, and after doing so, it became the default for the rest of the franchise going on. Because Ghost in the Shell's been redone a couple of times. You've got Standalone Complex. You got the garbage one done by Netflix. You got Arise or Rise or whatever it is. I watched it, but I don't remember what it's called. And I didn't write this section in my notes, so it's gone off track. But anyway, I think this will be the end. I didn't really account for too much here. I had a loose script, and it kind of got corrupted. So I'm sad. The bits I recovered just weren't good enough without the rest of it. So instead of redoing the whole thing, I just decided I'd gush about how great the original movie was, and how being faithful all the time isn't always a good thing, but being unfaithful can be bad. So mastering the art of being faithful and telling a good story, but also being unfaithful to connect the loose plot points together to tell a better story is a good thing. Because the Puppet Master plot point will only showed up towards the end, and that boat scene never existed originally. The bit where the Major talks about hearing the ghost of the Puppet Master, that is based on the part of in the story where the Major and all of Section 9 go to fight some terrorists on a boat. The Major kills a kid by accident. Well, you say accident, but she literally reacted in 0.05 seconds. Shoots the guy. She goes on trial for it. She fucking runs away because, she doesn't care at this point, and she decides she's gonna fuse with the internet. And yeah, so if you're gonna tell a story, tell it right. If you want to do an adaptation, don't be 100% faithful. Make sure you actually connect points that aren't bad. Don't do a Tokyo Ghoul where you skip all over the important plot points. And make sure you don't make another movie as bad as Ghost in the Shell 2017, where you grab all the things that made the original unique and throw it down the fucking toilet because you're bad. Thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe, tell me how garbage my writing is in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye. Now, talking about faithful adaptations, on the other hand of the spectrum, we have the garbage movie from 2017 that grabbed the amazing movie that existed in 1995 and just kind of crapped all over the legacy. The story was nonsensical. A lot of the original scenes lost their weight. The scene on the dock bit where the Major follows the crook was done terribly, where unlike in the original where the Major stops very early on because the guy clearly doesn't know anything about himself, the Major is just oh, I'm gonna beat you and drown you and hate you because I'm a not character in this version. And it honestly makes me sad. My brain turned off halfway through that movie because it was so fucking poorly written, and it made me hate ever turning on my TV and watching it. It was awful. When I talk about the original manga and the movie, the comparisons are night and day, because the manga told one story where the major was an upbeat. She was basically a problem child. She made jokes. She fucked around most of the time. She took nothing seriously, and the movie made her mysterious and interesting. And then we got the 2017 version, which took all the interesting parts out and made her mysterious in a way that could have been interesting, but didn't because the movie sucked. So I think we'll stop talking about the 2017 version. I just wanted to point out that it is bad and poorly adapted and is a clear sign of a terrible, unfaithful adaptation, unlike the original.